Good evening and welcome, everybody. It is 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday, February 25th, 2020, here at City Hall, and I'm calling this meeting of the Common Council of the City of Wausau to order. With a quorum present, we will be starting. We'll also start with tonight's proceeding of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And you can press yes to indicate your presence. All 11 members are present.
We have nobody registered for public comment tonight, so we'll move right down to the consent agenda, starting with file number 20-0201 from the City Council, the minutes of the previous regular meeting from February 11th, and ending with file number 19-1104, a joint effort of CISM and the Plan Commission for a final resolution vacating and discontinuing right-of-way at the intersection of West Thomas Street and South 15th Avenue. I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Mr. Peckham, thank you. Mr. Gisselman, I think you beat out Mr. Nutting, so.
You may begin voting. Motion carries unanimously.
Moving on to resolutions and ordinances, starting with file number 20-0203 for the mayor's appointments. We do have one for an Erin Decker, and she is joining the Mayor's Inclusivity and Diversity Committee. She does have a bio and everything attached and a letter of intent for your review. If everything goes right, I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Neal. Do I have a second? By Ms. Herbst.
Begin voting. Motion passes unanimously. Oh, sorry. The motion passes 10-1.
Okay. File number 16-0317, a resolution of the Capital Improvements and Street Maintenance Committee approving the Wisconsin Department of Transportation Transportation Alternatives Program, TAP, grant application to create a section of the Business Campus Trail System between 72nd Avenue and Innovation Way. Committee action approved 3-0. The fiscal impact, if the grant is not awarded, none. If the grant is awarded, future commitment of 20% of approved construction costs, equaling out to $149,651 for local share estimate, design costs of $29,930 for the local share estimate, and state review fees of $119,721 for an estimate between 2021 and 2024. Total project cost estimated at $1,017,626. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Gisselman. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can anybody come forward and speak to this?
Is he a second?
I need a second first, please. Second by Mrs. Rasmussen. Thank you. And Mr. Lindman, if you could come up, please.
Okay. Exactly what is this? Is it a walking and a bicycle path? Is that what we're doing here?
Right, this would be part of the business campus trail system.
Okay.
On our long-range plan, we have connections on the trail. So this is actually off of 72nd Avenue. Brings you up past the interstate there and up into the business campus.
Okay, and this is going to be used by people either walking or riding their bicycles? Are they going to be doing this coming to work? Do you think there are many people ride their bicycle to work out there?
Well, I think the long-range plan is actually the interconnectivity all the way out to the west side to County O. And so there's a long-range plan for that. And this, there's a lot of people out in the business campus, the workers that walk during lunch, that do exercise. There's a lot of bikers from the city that want to get from point A to point B safely. And so this is part of that interconnectivity that we're proposing.
The funding for this, does this come out of the general fund?
This comes out of our infrastructure fund, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So annually, as we budget for our contributions towards DOT projects, this is one of the line items with our DOT projects, that they contribute a certain amount. I think this one's a 90-10, and then we contribute the 10%.
Well, this is 20%, I think. Our share is 20%.
Okay.
So The funds that you say infrastructure fund, is that the funds that we like repair roads with and so on and stuff like
That's
that?
correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, it seemed to me this, if we're gonna spend, what is a total of $299,000? This is gonna serve a small share of community. It seems like to me we might be able to repair some of the other roads that everybody drives on.
I think when you look at this, I mean, when we work with the DOT, unfortunately, they have a long range. From the time project's actually approved till it gets constructed, we have a long time frame. The one thing you have to look at is their contribution towards the construction of the project, which is pretty heavy, something that we couldn't do on our own. And then the $300,000 that we'll be putting towards this will be done over the course of 3 to 4 years. And so it's not like one budget cycle that we're providing these costs for.
Well, this could stretch out for
Yes.
3, 4 years and
Yes.
so on.
Yep, that's how we budget it. A certain amount, what we estimate we're going to spend on these projects annually. So, the first year we might put 20,000 into it. The second year we might put 80,000 into it, depending on where we're at in
Okay.
the process.
All right,
Yes.
thank you. That answers my question.
Okay.
Mrs. Rasmussen?
Thank you. Part of the discussion we had when we entertained this in CISM also was that based on the volume of large vehicle and truck traffic in our business campus, it made sense for us to apply for the transportation alternative funding so that we can provide a safe place for pedestrians and bikes, partly contributing toward worker wellness programs, but also serving the populations that live out there. There's a number of new subdivisions that are out there, and those residents also are able to utilize that trail system and traverse those areas safely and not be sharing the street with heavy semi-truck traffic, which is prevalent in the business campus. The other thing that we had discussed is that with regard to the infrastructure budget, we would certainly not fix streets and not fill potholes to further a plan like this. And a number of the tax increment district plans in the business campus contemplate some expense for construction of walking trails and pedestrian and bike amenities. And so we certainly would not reduce the road repair budget to fund something like this. We asked those questions in CISM as well.
Mr. Nutting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see this as a quality of, not only quality of living for those who are residents that are within that area, north of that area, but a quality of worker wellness option for them as they could do that. The question I have, Mr. Lindman, is will the trail be maintained through the winter, or will it be cleared in some fashion by businesses out there potentially, or will it be allowed to cover over?
I believe this stretch would be. Not all stretches of our trail system are, but I think that this is on a main roadway. I think as we get through and get into construction, we'd have to work that out with Parks, with Jamie. But the intent, I think, from the city is that this would be cleared and maintained.
We think there'd be a collaborative effort maybe to offer to those businesses that are out there that are featuring it or benefiting from it, that we might look at their options of potentially keeping it clear.
Yeah, that would be great.
So I thought
They'd
that
be
might
willing to do that.
bring that
Yep.
forward to look at.
Very good option.
Okay, well, Ms. Lawrence?
I'll just jump in and agree with Dennis a little bit. I mean, I think this is great, and I know it's a separate pot of money from the state, and that's how DOT, avails their money. But the people in my district really care more about the streets and the potholes and public transit. So I just want to remind those of us who are left, when we do the next budget, that we need to make those a priority too, while we're looking at balancing tax rates and all that. But people really care about our streets and simple things like that. So I'll vote yes, but we can't forget the streets.
All right, you may begin voting. And that motion passes unanimously.
File number 20-0208, an ordinance of the Capital Improvements and Street Maintenance Committee designating one 15-minute parking stall in the 600 block of North 3rd Street. Committee action approved 3-0. The fiscal impact will be minimal, just to install a sign. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Gisselman, second by Mr. Neal. Mr. Nutting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the petitioner for this request has stated that it's best, would be best to have this space designated in the middle of the block, as I was reading the minutes, and as opposed to having it at the south end, which is by the Backwin Restaurant, which has a large parking lot right across the street, and of course at the other end. Is there an opportunity for this? Is this indeed going to be at the one corner, or can it be more in liking with the business that's requesting this in the middle of the block, is the concern that I have.
I bet you Mrs. Rasmussen will be able to answer that, so, go ahead.
Well, we may call up Mr. Lindman, but when we talked about it in CISM, there was no one good solution that would satisfy the petitioner. She has a need to utilize short-term parking, sometimes 5 or 6 times a day, for the purpose of loading and unloading, which takes about 5 minutes. That said, we looked at what we have in the rest of downtown, because we just undertook a Herculean effort to change parking downtown to build consistency. And what we found is that in each of the blocks, from the 300 block forward, there is one, and in one of the blocks, 2 15-minute stalls for quick service use. The 600 block didn't have one of those, and so for people that are just running in quick to the downtown grocery, to Boss Studios, to the candy shop, whatever, they could certainly make use of one of those stalls, but we did determine that on the other blocks, those stalls are positioned at one end. We talked with Lieutenant Buckner, and he indicated that it is not safe to load and unload a vehicle and provide a space like this mid-block, because as you're loading and unloading that vehicle, there's no one safe harbor for the person doing the loading and unloading to be safe from cars pulling in on both sides. And so his recommendation was that if we were going to allow a spot, that we allow it either at the north end or the south end, first for consistency, like we have on the other blocks, but then for pedestrian safety as the people are loading and unloading the car. Now, we did ask Mrs. Voss what her ideal solution was, and her ideal solution was a singular parking permit that she could be issued to hang in her vehicle while she's doing this loading and unloading. We don't have such a system. When they need longer-term parking, they also utilize the lots with the kiosks, or they rent some parking spaces from the law firm that butts up to the lot next to Suites on 3rd. So that said, they have other alternatives, but for now, this was the best we could do for them, and this really then would assist all of the businesses along that corridor that would have need for a short-term space, but not place it in an area that's not safe.
Mrs. Towle.
Lisa did a wonderful job. I just want to add a little bit more to give some context for all of you who are not part of the CISM committee. We almost voted no to not allow this, but when we looked at being able to standardize across what we have put in place for the 300 block, 400 block, we knew that we wanted to stay consistent. So that was first priority, right? Making sure we standardize. And then, we heard from Mrs. Voss and we heard from Blake, and we thought that this would be a win-win opportunity, that let's put the 15-minute parking at the south end, right? At the south end, based on what we heard from Officer Butner or Cord. And we thought it was a winning opportunity for us to at least meet some of their needs. It might not be as close as Mrs. Voss had wanted, but we were at least able to establish a one-stall, 15-minute parking available. So just want to share that some more.
Thank you. Mr. Nutting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Isn't there the opportunity for this business then to park there at a certain time of the day, and then the parking system notes that that car was there, and then they come back later on where they are back on that same side of the block, and wouldn't there be the jeopardy of that vehicle being tagged as having not moved from that block? I was wondering if there was a modification made for this potential. Thank you.
That was part of our
I was
discussion.
about to say, Mrs. Rasmussen,
Okay.
go ahead.
That was part of our discussion. Part of her key concern was that she would be in violation on a repetitive basis of the no reparking rule. there's no good fix for that at this point, other than for her to utilize a 15-minute stall. We talked about a loading zone, which is effectively a 15-minute stall anyway, but the placement should not be where she asked for the placement. And so the 15-minute stall is a solution. It's just not in proximity to where she wanted the solution to be placed. And we don't currently issue temporary parking permits for the purpose of loading and unloading. We also talked about delivery vehicles and some of the challenges that they face. I mean, often if you're downtown in the morning and you'll see, vendors delivering to the downtown businesses, their vehicles actually parked around the corner, and they're bringing items on a dolly to those individual stores to unload them. And so, the idea that if they're loading and unloading their vehicle, they may also need to have, utilize a rolling cart to make 2 trips, whatever they need to do to get from the 15-minute stall to their front door. But, at the south end, they're certainly closer than if we had placed the stall all the way at the north end on the Grant Street side. So we tried to get as much of an accommodation as we could get, but there was nothing that would be a 100% effective solution for Mrs. Voss.
You may begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
File number 20-0209, a resolution of the Economic Development Committee approving the sale of 1328 Torney Avenue. Committee action approved 4-0. Fiscal impact, sale of the property will result in an increase to the tax base once property is developed. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Martins. Do I have a second by Mrs. Rasmussen?
Begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
Up next is suspending the Rule 1-D, transmission of committee business to council for the items marked pending committee action. A 2/3 vote will be required. I'll entertain a motion to accept and move this forward. Motion by Mr. Nutting, second by Mr. Neal.
Begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
Resolution of the Common Council tonight supporting our Hmong and Lao community and opposing federal deportation of Hmong and Lao residents to Laos. Obviously, the committee action is pending. The fiscal impact will be none. And this is in regards for things that are going on that has been in the news lately, and there's been several of us. This was brought forward by Mrs. Tao and Mrs. Rasmussen.
Thank you. I guess I would like to have Mary speak on this issue. She has been very involved with the situation that's been taking place at the national level. I did reach out to her last week to see if she thought that there would be value to the council speaking with one voice on this issue. Obviously, if there are legal issues with any of the folks involved, our justice system is equipped to handle those issues without sending people to a country where they've got no family and no representation. And so with that, Mary had authored a letter to Secretary of State Pompeo immediately when the events started to take place, and she also has worked to obtain specimen resolutions from other communities. So I would like her to speak to this.
And my apology before we start, Mary, I need a motion and a second, please. Motion by Mr. Nutting, second by Mr. Neal. Thank you. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you so much, Lisa. This is a collaborative effort. I want to thank Lisa, for supporting the resolution and reviewing that with me, along with Ann Jacobson, our city attorney, and also the mayor for all of your support in bringing it forward to our agenda today. Just to give a little bit of background, a few weeks ago, there was a letter from Senator Betty McCollum of the state of Minnesota that circulated online showing her her opposition to the engaged conversations that the current administration, specifically Secretary of State Pompeo, having with the Lao ambassador about potential residents who have final orders that would be deported back to Laos. Some of these Lao Hmong residents are some of our neighbors and live in our communities. And just to provide a little bit more detail, these are allies of ours, those that fought in the Vietnam War with us during the Secret War, those who have fled persecution when the war ended and took flight to create a home here in the United States. Laos is not their homeland. It's not even their country. And so we're more concerned today about the families that would be broken apart, the fear that some of these neighbors or constituents or community members have to live through in the last 3 weeks. Certainly, the resolution that's in front of you today is a resolution that we've leveraged some of that language with the Common Council in the city of Madison, the city of Appleton, and other cities across the country that have a strong presence of Hmong Lao community members. So I ask for your consideration today to stand united. This is a human rights concern. This is not a partisan concern. This is really to engage and say we care about the people in our community. These are people who have built businesses here, have made Wausau their home. They have children who attend our public schools and our universities and our technical colleges here. And let's not contribute to the fear that some of these conversations that are being had at the national level bring that fear into the local level here in our communities. So that's some of the information that I want to share with all of you, and I hope you, support this resolution tonight.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've read a little bit about this, and maybe Ms. Tao can educate me. Exactly why would these people be deported? I'm assuming the government's just not picking names out of a hat and sending people back to Laos or to Cambodia, wherever they would be sent. So what I've read, these are people that have been convicted of crimes. Now, I don't know what crimes they've been convicted of, if they're serious crimes, if they're writing bad checks or whatever. And also, my other question is, do we have people in this community that are going to be deported, or is this, I guess I need to know why the government must have a reason to deport these people. So what is that reason?
Thank you for your questions, Elder Smith. What I can tell you is that I'm not well-versed in deportation policies, but what I can share with you is that we do have 5 confirmed individuals that are living in Marathon County that do have final orders that we are highly concerned about, that this could impact and this can affect them and their families. What I can share with you is that we want to respect the dignity of people. If they've committed some crimes when they were, of the age of 18 and they're an adult, I would like to believe that they've served their time and they've been rehabilitated. And these are people who are some of the most upstanding citizens in our community. I can't use the word citizen because they're not citizens of the United States of America, but I would say that they're constituents or residents or people of political refugees that have really spent the last couple of decades really improving their lives and themselves. So I can't tell you why they're being selected, why they have the final order. I'm not an immigration law expert, but I can tell you that there are 5 confirmed cases that we are aware of, and it's one too many.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. These people have been here for an extended period of time. Is there any particular reason they did not file for citizenship? Become citizens? I'm sure they had the opportunity to do so.
I can only make an assumption, and this is not an expert opinion, but I can only assume that cost, being able to navigate the immigration law process, it could be complex and very intimidating. I can only speak from my own personal experience. I have a brother. I'm the youngest in my family. And when he was in Minnesota, he was the age of 18, and he got into a really bad fight, and he was convicted of attempted murder. He did not murder someone, but he got into a fight where it injured someone. I remember being young in the 90s, where my father invested every dollar that he made working for Catholic Charities to be able to pay the fees for an immigration attorney to really help us navigate the system. And I think that due to the lack of education, Elder Smith, that some people may not know how to navigate, the waters to make sure that they can get naturalized and be a citizen. In my situation with my sibling, with my brother, he's still not a naturalized citizen. And every day, we still have concerns about what would happen from charges that he received 30-plus years ago, that may come back and haunt him, being someone that could be potentially deported. So though I can't give you a clear answer on why certain individuals, maybe they're scared. Maybe they're afraid that if they go, they may get detained by Homeland Security. Those are some of the things that I've heard. But that's my perspective from someone in my family, and I can't give you a real answer.
Ms. Lawrence?
Thank you. Since we have a state representative, Pat Snyder, in the office, I have a question, and in the audience. Is there any discussion, movement in the state in terms of, the economic value and the community presence that the Hmong and Laotian people have developed over the past few decades? And is the state, on top of this at all, working with federal officials, or not yet to?
Representative Snyder, could I trouble you to come up here, please, just for the record and for amplification, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
There was a resolution in the support. I know that Representative Shanklin put a letter out to the congressional delegation. Governor Evers has sent a letter to the Secretary of State Pompeo. As far as when it comes to the feds, though, we can't really interfere. My office, I haven't got any contact from anyone here in the 85th district about any kind of aid we can help with, but we know the value, and I guess I'm confused as well, because I thought the folks that came over in the 70s, 80s, and 90s all had legal status, and suddenly when this came up, I was a little confused. For some reason, I thought it was after 2001, but again, I hope it gets sorted out, and we can make sure we don't disrupt families. Yeah.
Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just very briefly, one really troubling factor about this proposal from the State Department is its random appearance to me. We have all sorts of populations in our country of people who have immigrated from various countries around the world. I don't see a big push to, round up all the Norwegians with, criminal records and send them back to Norway. Okay? I'm not seeing it. The optics of this is really bad, and I think it's important for communities to unite and have a voice that says, no, this is not how things should be done.
Mr. Peckham?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some excellent points have been made by my colleagues across the room here. One of them being that these, and what I heard was, in many cases, these are individuals who made mistakes and got into the criminal justice system early on when they arrived here, and their noses have been clean ever since. And so, as someone said, if somebody's gone through our justice system, which I think is quite a good one, I think we should be allowed to deal with those cases ourselves. And if we were going to deport them somewhere, Laos would probably be the last humane place we'd want to send them. So this is a good idea, and we should support it.
And you may begin voting. The motion passes unanimously.
File number 20-0210, resolution of the Finance Committee authorizing the acquisition of 117 and 119 East Chalice Street and related budget modification. Committee action approved 5-0. The fiscal impact will be $32,000. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Ms. Rasmussen. Do I have a second by Ms. Herbst? Thank you.
Begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
File number 08-0406, a resolution of the Finance Committee approving the alleged claim on excessive assessment for the Walgreen Company at 504 South 17th Avenue and related budget modification. Committee action approved 5-0. The fiscal impact will be a requested refund of $22,905. Entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Mr. Nutting. Do I have a second, please? By Mr. Martins. Thank you.
And you may begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
And file number 12-116 from the Finance Committee, a resolution approving the assessment services contract between the City of Wausau and the City of Schofield to provide assessment services to the City of Schofield for the assessment of real and personal property for contract years 2021 through 2025. Committee action approved 5-0, and the amount will be $18,900, a benefit to the City of Wausau. I'll entertain a motion to accept. Motion by Ms. Herbst. Do I have a second? Mr. Peckham?
Begin voting. Motion passes unanimously.
And at this time, we always let this open as far as for public hearing, for public comment on items either on the agenda or anything going on in the city. If anybody would like to come forward and speak on a matter, now's your chance.
I guess I could say one.
I was about to say, do you bear gifts?
I wish I bear gifts.
I thought you had blue books, so.
Oh, I did. I passed them around.
Okay.
So, just to let you know that in the last session before the new administration, the DOR made a mistake to municipalities and in some cases sent out more money than what should have been received. And I believe Wausau was one of those. And so we took action in the Assembly not to claw back any of the money.
Thank you.
Yes, so that hopefully the Senate will follow suit and the governor will agree. So just let you know.
Thank you for doing that. I don't know even what to say after that. Sir, how you doing? If you could please, your name and your address in 3 minutes, please.
Christopher Withers, 119 East Chella Street. I am here to ask you guys to reconsider purchasing the house after the tenants have moved out, the cost that it is putting on them in the strain, because of the low rent rate down there, finding a new home is becoming quite difficult. That's within the budget. And I'm under the understanding that the city does not want to purchase the home until the tenants are out. This is a family that's been here 30 years plus. And they've been going through a lot, so if you guys can figure something out or help out or anything would be appreciated.
I do sympathize with you, sir, in the situation. Obviously, they're tenants. This is between the owner of the property, and that decision has already been rendered, unless... Go ahead, Mrs. Tow.
I thought one of the properties was foreclosed, right, Eric? I'm saying Eric, but I'm looking at Gary and Lisa. We're in SISM. You're referring to the property in 117 and 119 East Chalice?
Yes.
I thought one of the two properties was in foreclosure. No? Is it an empty lot, empty parcel and a house? Now I'm just making assumptions, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, one of them is a vacant piece of property, and then the other one has a home on it.
Okay, thank you for
Yep,
clarifying.
It's being rented. Yep.
Just a point of clarification.
Mrs. Rasmussen.
We considered this in the Finance Committee right before this meeting, and the deputy clerk notified me that we had actually taken action on this item prior to tonight's meeting, and all we were approving tonight was the budget mod to fund it, but the action had been completed a couple months ago, and so this was not a new vote tonight, and the owner had negotiated with the city, and the time for advocacy for the tenant would have been back then prior to that final decision, but all this is doing is freeing up the money.
That's the answer, sir.
So we're late on that, I guess, if, months late, because the owner of the property negotiated with the city, not the tenant.
Correct.
I was just under the assumption that the city would not purchase the home finalize the purchase until the tenants were out, because it might cost the city money to get the tenants out, is the assumption that I've been put under.
Mrs. Jacobson?
Well, if our office is working to close that transaction or acquire that property, we'll look into those details, because the comments you're making are correct. We'd prefer to acquire it with no tenants in the building. So that's a fact of which I was unaware, but we'll work with staff to find out when the properties are needed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Would anybody else like to come forward and speak about a matter? And one more time, would anybody like to come forward? All right then, Mr. Peckham, you're up.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure the rest of the council and anybody in the audience who's interested would know that at the noon meeting today of the Community Development Authority, they had 3 proposals for the old Ponderosa Motel. They chose a proposal from Emmerich and Associates, and that is going to mean the demolition of the building, pause for applause, and the certain construction of an 8-unit apartment building that's going to be much more attractive. And if Mr. Emmerich can negotiate the purchase of the adjoining property that was the former Eagle's Nest, he's going to put more buildings there. So people that I spoke with since that meeting are quite pleased, and I think the neighborhood is going to be better off.
Sometimes it takes time, but we do get things done. Mrs. Rasmussen?
Thank you. Just a reminder for anyone that's interested in the utility projects that the city has previously approved and has moved forward, both the drinking water treatment plant facility and the upgrades to the wastewater treatment facility. In response to a request from my neighborhood group, the Northwest Neighborhood Group, they had requested a couple of extra public meetings so that they could stay informed, especially the residents adjacent to the site where the plan is being carried out. With that, Public Works Director Lindman scheduled a meeting. It's at NTC tomorrow night at 5:30. That is not just a meeting for District 7. We did mail invitations to everyone residing within a half-mile boundary of the plant site, but any resident who's interested in those projects or has questions about them is welcome to come and get their questions answered. And whether those questions are about the project, the design plan will be there so you can look at it. The consultants will be there. If you have questions about the rates, about the costs, the financing, the floodplain, the deadline for the DNR mandates that's coming in 2022, all of those things will be discussed by the consultant, and staff members involved in the project will be there, and we'll take as many questions as people have. That said, after we scheduled the meeting for tomorrow night, recognizing that tomorrow is Ash Wednesday and that people may not be able to make it, I requested that Eric look for a second date. He has scheduled a second meeting for March 18th at 5 o'clock in this chamber. So anyone that can't make it tomorrow night is welcome to come on the 18th of March. That meeting will contain the same material as the meeting tomorrow night. Also, anyone interested in the project is welcome. Same question and answer period with a short presentation. And that's just, that meeting that we have in the chamber here will be recorded by public access, so it can be live streamed and so that it can be placed on the website for on-demand view by anyone who wants to see it, so that we can keep residents informed. Originally, it started out keeping the neighbors informed that are near the Bugby Avenue site, but there's widespread interest in the project in the city, and I just want to remind everyone that that meeting's happening and that everyone is welcome to attend that has an interest. So either session, but if anyone has questions, either in your districts or from the public, come on out and get those questions answered.
And thank you, Mr. Lindman, for doing that to get the facts out there in a correct and proper manner. Ms. Lawrence?
Thank you. I know we're not a social service agency, but we do housing. So I'm not sure what I heard between the lines, but I'm going to sleep better tonight knowing that your office will work with Tammy Stratz and kind of addressing whatever issues this young man was referring to. And I know we have to close on the property, but there must be some special need there. Thank you.
And with that, I'll consider the public hearing part of our meeting closed, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, boy, that was quick, Ms. Herbst. And do I have a second? Not everybody at once? Mrs. Towle, thank you.
And you can vote.
Threw her arm on a joint getting
Okay, Dennis. Dennis didn't vote.
Sorry.
Dennis doesn't.
Fire me. Did it work? And we are adjourned, everybody. Have a great night.
I just.